if you ask more powerful questions like, how can I make $10,000 today? How can I go out and find the love of my life? What can I do that's going to facilitate better physical vitality? When you ask those kind of questions, your unconscious mind goes, oh, I'm going to give you those answers as well.
Yeah, and we're recording, but we have just hit the record button. Listen, I deeply and truly appreciate you doing it. I imagine it's quite an experience to agree to have a podcast with a total no-name, isn't it?
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Great. Well, let me first of all clarify the purpose of the current podcast. I'd like to sort of lay out the objectives of the recording, if you don't mind. So, you know, I've had different guests on my, although small podcast, but I've still been quite privileged with having different types of guests. And then one moment fairly recently, I've just understood, you know, I think one of the benefits of using the internet and technology is the ability to expose yourself to people significantly, or at least supposedly more experienced and successful, right? Those who've achieved tremendously more than I have. And I've just, at one point, I've got tired of talking to people that, because realistically, I've had people that are serious and others were total joke, to be honest. And I've just thought, okay, so, you know, so I wanted to clarify what really matters for me. And then I went on that lovely platform, matchmakers.com, I think. And I thought, well, shit, I got to talk to somebody who can literally contribute to my overall betterness, you know, and the overall quality of my life. So tell me if I've referred to the right person.
I guess you have. I contacted you.
Oh, you did? Really? You referred to me?
I liked your profile. I like what you stood for. I like what your intention was behind the podcast itself.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. I kind of got a bit lost in who wrote who, but good. Nice. Now, I would imagine normally, are you a frequent guest on the podcast? Do you often hop on different shows?
Oh, yeah. For the last probably 3-4 years, I've been doing a lot of them. Yeah.
And normally I would assume the host introduces you, but I hope you won't consider it impolite or rude if I ask you to introduce yourself, to talk a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, I don't know if you went to the site or not. I have a whole interview page and, you know, interview questions, biography, the introduction, all of that. So if that's also something you're interested in, everything is there for you to deal with. There's pictures, promos, everything. I try to set it up and help you and your guests, you know, really get a sense of what we do here. Yeah, that's good. I'll be sure to include the link in the description. But for those that may not open the site and just are interested in hearing how you would introduce yourself, you are a behavioral expert. Behavioral specialist, communication skills. Really, that's what neuro-linguistic programming, you know, NLP. You've heard of Tony Robbins, obviously. I was trained by the same people that trained Tony, so the technology is the same, what we deal with.
When people refer to you, when they seek out a help of a person similar to you, what are the main aspects that they'd like to improve? Because obviously we're dealing with kind of a life optimization, if we may, right? So what are the main aspects of life that people are curious into?
Well, that's a great question. And the way I normally answer this is everybody comes to self-help or self-development for exactly the same reasons. We want something, but we find that we get in our own way more often. We self-sabotage ourselves. And what I found in coaching people for the last 20 years is that most people really have a self-worth issue. That's the challenge or the core that we are confronted with daily. Because and you probably know this, working with a lot of people, once people feel really confident and they feel like they can move forward, there's usually nothing that stands in their way. Outside circumstances are fine. We just learn to overcome them. They're just obstacles. But the biggest challenge is with ourselves.
So it's a superpower in a way, right?
I haven't heard it like that. But yeah, that's my next book, actually, is Mastering Self-Confidence.
Right. How many books have you written so far?
7.
7. Interesting. Yeah. Would you mind briefly introducing me to those books, like first and second? I'm really curious to hear.
Yeah, the very first book I wrote was interesting. I found a book inside Barnes and Noble. You know what Barnes and Noble is?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, and I thought, wow, I could do much better than this. And the book was basically a question book. Yeah. It was about asking questions. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. So the first book I put together with a hardcover of 101 questions. And really, some of them were funny. Most of them were really thought-provoking. Like Aristotle said, asking the right question is half the answer. We already know the unconscious mind. If we can formulate a question in our mind, that means we have the resources to answer it. And so I put that book out. Then I did a couple of books on, one was a fitness book on meal planning, because I've been in health and fitness and vitality for a long time. The next one I did was on blood pressure. That was really interesting. I find myself working with a lot of people that had high blood pressure, which now has become a national epidemic. I wrote a book on business partnerships. I co-authored with 12 different authors and put a book together on how to communicate more effectively in business. The next book was on setting goals, and that book's really taken off. We've done really well with that. And then the most recent book was about the topic of neuro-linguistic programming, and that's called Discovering NLP. And that goes in really in depth of how the unconscious mind works and how we have these negative strategies or negative beliefs roaming around our head and how to deal with them or eliminate them completely.
Is NLP anyhow similar to hypnosis, or am I way too off?
Yes and no. I think you really have to understand what the unconscious mind does. The unconscious mind runs 90% of who we are. All the programs, these programs and recipes, I call them, mental recipes that we have, are at the unconscious level. We only operate at a 10% of our conscious mind. And so therefore, everything below that 10% is under a hypnotic level. And to get to that 90%, we've got to be in that theta state. And that's the way to access those programs. And that's really what hypnosis is about, relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, so we can get past that negative processes of the brain itself. NLP is really about the programs or the tools to do that. So they work in conjunction with each other, but they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, but the later seems to me as if a bit of a more permanent state, would you say, rather than when hypnosis is a little bit of a short term? Would that be the difference?
What do you mean by that? Like, what's more permanent?
Well, you've mentioned that, how did you call that, theta?
The theta state, right? There's four stages of awakeness. There's beta, theta, delta, and then alpha, which is what we're in normally.
And when one reaches that state during hypnosis, it doesn't last. So the outcomes might be long-lasting, right? But normally the whole, like, the hypnosis session is relatively short, right?
Yeah. So yes, the hypnosis session. I mean, hypnosis is pretty easy to use. Yeah. We're in hypnosis all the time. We're going in and out of hypnosis all the time. Once you close your eyes, you go from alpha state to a beta state right away. And when you're sleeping, this is one of the things I tell my clients, the easiest way to really understand what hypnosis is, right before you fall asleep, you're kind of in that state of, I'm awake, but I know I'm asleep. That theta state, that's when you're most susceptible. Or when you're waking up and you open your eyes for the first time and you're like, God, am I awake or am I still asleep? It's the same state. We go in and out of it. And so,
by the way, that state, sorry not to interrupt you, but I think maybe you've dealt a little bit with lucid dreaming, because that state which you've just described is a perfect condition to enter a lucid dream, a dream which is controlled.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because dreaming is really at a delta level state, which is the fourth stage of sleep, and which is you're completely unconscious, really, not seriously. Your unconscious mind is always listening, even when you're asleep, but you've unplugged from it, and so. That's not a real useful state to be in, because there's nothing really to attach it when you get into hypnosis.
What would you say are the main reasons for people to refer to a hypnotherapist?
Good question. In fact, I just
do they extract out of it?
We were just talking about this in an article that I wrote. People come to NLP or hypnosis or usually some form of self-therapy for only two reasons. They're feeling feelings they don't want to feel, or they're doing behaviors they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Whatever labels that we place upon those things, depression, anxiety, frustration, elation, excitement, love, those are feelings, or the behaviors could be negative habits, bad habits that we have. Oh, every time I get in a great relationship, I self-sabotage because I do this, or I do this. Smoking, that's a bad habit. So their feelings and behaviors, we usually come to untraditional therapy, as I call it, to rid ourselves of those things. Traditional therapy is usually just talk therapy, analytical therapy. I don't so much believe in that because the premise is that we, the client or the patient, is supposed to come to a realization of how we're supposed to fix ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because that's really what talk therapy is about. Traditional therapists aren't allowed to give you advice. They're not allowed to tell you what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm. And do you think they should be, though?
And there's the ethical question in it, right? Because unfortunately, like anything else, you've heard the story of the woman that spilled hot coffee in her lap. She was 80 years old in McDonald's, and she turned around and sued McDonald's because the coffee was too hot. Whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. Was it McDonald's fault that the coffee was 10 degrees hotter, or was it the fact that she had it in her lap and she spilt it? So I guess it's the same question here. How do we really formulate what's responsible and who's responsible for our own well-being?
Right. How does an NLP session, if that term is applicable here, normally look like?
Well, it's the same as a coaching session, really. Yeah. And the first question I ask every one of my clients is, let's pretend I'm your travel agent. What's the first question I'm going to ask you?
Oh, I would imagine if I'm a travel agent, if I'm happy with my job, perhaps.
No, I'm the travel agent, and I'm asking you. What's the first question I'm going to ask you when you come to me?
Where I've been, perhaps.
You want to go?
Yeah.
Right? You're coming to me because I want to help facilitate a destination for you. Well, It's the same thing in coaching, in results coaching. I'm going to ask you, where do you want to go? What destination do you want to arrive at? What problems do you want to overcome? What's holding you back? And so we start with that. And then we've kind of I build in a platform for them to feel really comfortable because, as I tell my clients, I'm kind of brutal in how I approach what I do with them. I don't really pull any punches. I don't have time, and you don't have time, and the client doesn't want to spend a lot of money, so I want to get to the core issue. So as they're talking, I build in word pictures in my head, and I can formulate a giant puzzle of where they're at. It's pretty easy, actually, when you get good at it. You kind of formulate this whole picture of what their life is up until this point and what the problems are. And then I just say, okay, could this be a problem that you're dealing with now? Have you ever encountered this issue? What have you tried in the past that hasn't worked? What do you think is holding you back? What emotions are you constantly dealing with that are challenging you? When you start asking questions like that, most people don't want to answer it because it's becoming vulnerable. A lot of people don't want to become vulnerable. We're open, and our heart is open, and our physiology is open. We're open for attack in a way. But if we can do that, we can open ourselves for criticism and comment and what's the other word I'm looking for is
realization of some kind.
Yeah. There's another word I was thinking of, but yeah, that's what it is. Really, the reality of it, because most people don't want to face reality. Then that's the first step in change: is acknowledging where you're at.
What do you think should happen to a person's life for him or her to make her truly understand the importance of vulnerability? Because it doesn't happen randomly, I imagine.
That's a good question. Well, the first thing is awareness. I believe that's the first thing in any step in change. I mean, even I've talked to a lot of people that are in AA, and the first theory is you have to believe that you need help. right? You've got to believe. And it doesn't mean that, and one of the things we talk about in NLP is no one's broken. We're not broken. We don't need fixing. We need better strategies. We need better mental recipes to produce the results we want. Usually for things like alcoholism, people that work too much, they're deferring their emotions. They're just escaping to another mental state of mind rather than dealing what they need, and that's up front, which is usually the goals that they want to achieve. They're like, I can't achieve this. This is too difficult. This is too hard. I'm not worth it. It's going to take too long. I'm going to spend too much money. So we divert and reflect that attention, and we do something else. That's what you can call procrastination as well, right? Most people have a really hard time acknowledging that fact. And I think once you can do that, once you can open up to the fact that I've got problems, I've got issues that aren't working in my life, you seek help outside of you. We weren't born with the owner's manual to the brain, so we can't go, oh, let me look in page 64, I'm troubleshoot that problem and do this. So you
learn as you go.
Well, you hope. That's called trial and error, right? But most people are usually, because the unconscious mind, which runs 90% of us, is repeating the same thing over and over again. And normally we get stuck in a bad habit and we loop through that same thing over and over again. And I'll give you an example. Relationships are a perfect example of that looping process. If you've gone through enough relationships after a while, it's not the other person. You got to take a look at yourself.
Yeah, it's
the only common denominator in that. And so it's the negative programming or the beliefs that you have or the strategies that you're running that aren't working. And so once you acknowledge that, then you start asking the more powerful questions. How can I help myself? How can I replace these negative thoughts or these negative behaviors with more powerful ones that'll help me?
Do you think those that don't wish to be helped can ultimately be helped? Because that's been an open question for me. I've been thinking, it's obvious that only after a person wishes to be helped can he take certain steps and take certain help. But what about those sad and tragic cases when a person seemingly refuses any help for multiple reasons? Can those people be at least somehow facilitated and helped?
Well, that's a good question, because you'd get into the theory of now mind control, because that's what it would take. We don't work with people that aren't committed. It's that simple. If you're not willing to do the work, and what I do, and one of the things that I specifically do when I'm working with clients is I give people small incremental tasks, little exercises that they do to prove to me that they're getting through the process and that they're going to do the work to get to the destination. Because getting to where you want is like a ladder. There's rungs in the ladder, and every step is crucial in determining whether you're going to finish or not. And so if somebody's not willing to do the first piece of work, why bother? Why bother as a coach to bang your head against the wall to try to get them just to do a simple exercise? I'll give you an example. I just working with another gentleman in the last couple of weeks who wanted to lose like 15 pounds, and he's already in great shape. My first theory is this, with every client I work on. Once we find out what you want and what you know, and you're real clear about it, the second process I ask them to do is write down 100 reasons why you want this so badly. Tell me 100 reasons why you want to succeed. Most people inside their head go, 100? Oh my God, I could never do 100. I could maybe do 50. Here's the funny thing. It doesn't matter the number that you give them. They're always going to cut it in half.
Really?
Every single time. If I say, I need you to give me 50 reasons why you're so committed, they'll go, oh, my 50? Maybe 25, but not 50.
And what does it tell you? The fact that they cut it twice, what does it tell you?
I don't know what causes that. I mean, you could probably say fear or pain. They just don't want to go through the writing process. Like, oh my God. If I said 1,000, which would be ridiculous to say that, they'd go, oh my God, there's no way, maybe 500. But so do you understand? 500 themselves is like, wow, that's amazing. If they do 500, I'd be like shocked. But they couldn't do 1,000. So it's really interesting. And here's the crazy part. I never tell them that all those answers have to be different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If they gave me one answer 100 times, the same 100 times, that'd be acceptable too. I didn't tell them what to write. Give them the task. And the task is what's most important, that they finish it. Because that's going to be the next rung in the ladder to this task, to the next task, to the next task.
Have you ever had cases when a client just straight up laid out all the required number? If it's 100, he just gave you 100. If it's 50, he gave you 50. Has that happened?
Yeah, the gentleman I was just talking about, and I was surprised. I said, look, this was like on a Monday or Sunday or Monday, and I said, look, take the whole week to do it. Really think about it. I want to know really what's driving you right now. What's your motivation to want to do this? He did it in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
I was shocked.
Yeah, that one is definitely motivated.
Yes. That tells me something about his character and his personality. If he's willing to sit down and go through that grind right away.
Imagine how many conclusions he draws for himself after finishing that process. I bet it enlightens him, right?
And that's you're good. You're good.
Yeah,
that's the whole purpose of it, right? That's the whole purpose. It's not for me. I could care less if he writes 1 or 100. It doesn't matter to me. It's important to him because that's going to be the driving force which really moves his behavior forward. Because here's what I really end up telling them. Okay, now, out of those 100 reasons, I want you to take out the most important 10. So he did that within a couple hours. That was easy for him. I said, great. Now, out of those 10, I want you to prioritize them from 1 to 10. 1 being the most important and 10 being the least important of those.
Right.
Here's what happens. What we found that is, and these are called values. Values are what's most important to us. They drive our behavior. When you figure out what your top 3 values are, your top 3 motivations, those are the things that really drive your behavior. That's what drives your success. Like, I'll give you an example. One of his was, I want to look good for a vacation, right? Now, that's a vanity thing, but it's also an internal confidence thing, right? He said, I want to get my weight down because my blood pressure is really high, and I'll feel a lot better, right? That's
legit.
That's health and vitality, right? So we look at those and we break those up. It's like, okay, you look at one that's confidence, physical vitality, and one was for his family. Right, doing good for his family, so he feels better. He can do more with his immediate family. So those values are going to be the driving factors, what we call the universal drivers in our behavior.
So once you've laid out his reason, and once you've both articulated it well enough, what's next?
Then we really define the goal. We really define what it is that they want. Like the first thing he said to me is, I just want to lose weight. And I said, okay, great. Well, let's do the homework. And then now let's define what exactly that you want. I said, let's find out where you are. Like as a travel agent, I need to know what city they're traveling from, right? Like they want to go to New York. I need to know where they want to start in Los Angeles, right? Same thing. How much do you weigh? I weighed 208 pounds. Okay, what's your ultimate goal? I'd like to get down to 98. Great, it's 10 pounds. He said, ultimately, I'd like to get down to like 195. I say, great, but that's not our goal right now. Let's focus on the 10 pounds. And he just texted me today because he's going on vacation tomorrow to Hawaii. He hit his goal. Actually, he made 11 pounds today. So once that goal is real clear in the unconscious mind, is one of the things Napoleon Hill said in his book, Think and Grow Rich. The very first thing that every one of the successful people that he interviewed was they have he called it a burning white heat of desire to achieve that goal. But that goal had to be real clear first. So he needs to know what it is.
Right, not obscure, well-defined. Yeah, you've got to go. Do I listen relatively constantly, guys that are proponents of this balance, so to speak. So, we keep hearing from a lot of sources how important it is to take it slowly, to balance things out. And there are some outliers that take it to a crazy extent. Which strategy do you lean into?
So are you talking about time-wise?
Everything-wise. Effort, time, resources. Do you, in terms of achieving a goal, do you go all in or do you take it in
You mean working with the client?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, achieving a goal. Do you personally believe for a client it is important to focus single, narrow vision and going all in into that one thing, that one outcome? Or do you think it's also important to keep a balance and become kind of smart about that? Like take it in moderation, if I articulate
I think in general, people have somewhat, most people, and this, I can only speak for most people, have a balance in their life. They cut out time for this. They cut out time for that. They have time for their goals. They have time to work out. They have time to eat right. We all have the same 24 hours. It just depends on what's your motivation, right? And you can also call that discipline. How disciplined are you to use the motivation to get to your goal? I don't particularly push anybody in one direction or another. I don't care if it takes them 10 weeks or 10 days to get their goal. What does it matter to me? The most important thing for me is that they get the result they want. So I don't care how long it takes. They may, but that's not for me to decide. I'll give you an example. One of the things I teach a 12-day NLP certification course, just like the same one that Tony Robbins took, 30 years ago. And we tell people, hey, you have these negative beliefs and these challenges. A lot of times it'll take you about 2 weeks to get through some of this and overcome it and replace it with something that's more empowering. And most people literally say this, oh, good. I can handle 2 weeks. That's perfect. I couldn't handle 6 months. They have their own timelines. Everybody's got their own timeline. I want to work within those timelines because that's also a belief system that they have, which we call boundary conditions around that particular result that they want. I don't want to work outside the boundary conditions of that belief. So if they believe that it's going to take them 2 weeks to get it done, I'm going to go, wow, you know what? That's really interesting because every client I work with, it takes exactly 2 weeks to get the result. That's called building rapport. I want to build a rapport with the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind just told me that they want 2 weeks to accomplish that. Why would I push them for a week or 10 days or 6 months? It's not going to serve them at all. So to answer your question is everybody's got their own timeline. A good practitioner is always going to understand that.
Have you interacted with any cases with any clients who was unnecessarily stressed because of wrong timing, for example, who would put himself in unrealistic timing?
Yeah, I just worked with a gentleman last year this was interesting. He wanted me to help him when he was day trading in the stock market. And he was always under this pressure because he didn't know when to push the button to hit the trade because he was building up all this stress in himself, and he didn't know the right time to do it. And I was like, that's really interesting. The timing based upon the fear. But then that's also a belief system that he has, right? So where's the boundary conditions of that belief? If it's too much money, I can't hit the button, is one of the things that we've found out. I said, well, what if you're only stressed about making $500 a day? Is that okay? He goes, yeah, I could do that. It's when I get up to, it's that $2,000 mark. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting that from 500 to 2,000, it's really not even the money, is it? It's what is perception of what that money represents. And once you can diminish that, once I could collapse that time down, say, how do you do it? How do you do it here at 500 and not do it here at 2,000? And NLP is about modeling success. How do you do it here that we can do it here? So we just had to figure out what his belief systems and his physiology, what he was doing internally, he was doing over here at 500, and then just install it over here at the $2,000 mark. That's really all behavior is.
Thoughts-wise, when you're talking about deconstructing what he was doing in the initial point, do you refer to mindset-wise, belief system-wise, or practical actions and decisions?
All three of those, because it's what we say to ourselves internally, right? Our internal dialogue. It's what our body is doing, because that is a huge factor. I mean, one of the things I tell my clients first is use your body, use your physiology, throw your shoulders back, take a deep breath. That usually eradicates some negative emotion you're going through so you can think a little bit more clear. When people are in a negative state and they're stressed out, they're usually hunched over and they're kind of tense.
That's crazy how it affects their decisions.
Oh, huge. It's huge. I mean, you could look at somebody across the room and tell whether or not they're feeling good or not, can't you? You can look at a couple that, you know, a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend in a restaurant and tell if they're in love, just like the body language is. And so when I'm working with a client, if I can see them, that obviously helps, but I can always ask them the question, how are you standing? How are you sitting right now? Are your shoulders slumped forward? Is your head down? I can tell by the tone of their voice that they're talking really low, and you can hear if their breathing is too tight. I understand that the physiology, their belief systems, and their internal attitude is affecting, it's called the triangle. That triangle is affecting the results that they have. So once we can basically distill out, we call it, we distill out those three things, we leave the event over here, we can take those three common denominators and place it in something that they do want to do. And then all of a sudden now $2,000 doesn't seem so fearful anymore.
That client of yours that you dealt with last year who was getting into trading or had been dealing with trading, did you give him any practical advice how to increase his income in trading specifically?
No, because I don't, that's not what I do, right? I'm not, let's say, I'll give you an example. If I was a track coach, right, I can tell them what they're doing specifically to increase it, but I don't tell them how to run because that's their body. That's their body and mind working together, and they have a specific strategy for that. But I can tell them how to improve it. So, I mean, it's all relative. I mean, if I was an expert in, you know, in day trading, I might be able to give him advice, but even then I probably still wouldn't because I don't want to be responsible for a loss for him. My responsibility is to his belief systems and what's holding him back from getting to where he wants to go.
Getting back to that first book of yours, which you published, was regarding questions, right? How many? What was the title? 100 or 1,000 important questions?
Asking the right question.
Asking the right questions. What are the examples of objectively, generally beneficial and useful question that one might ask, regardless of condition and circumstances?
In working with a client, let's say that's maybe coming to me that's stuck.
Yes, generally stuck and wants to overall optimize and enhance, improve his life. I know it's a blurry goal, but maybe like top 5 question.
So there's a process that was developed in NLP called the meta model. And the word meta means about or above. And the meta model is based on a set of questions that we ask the client to uncover more information. People speak so vaguely. And a lot of people that are listening to the content would have a hard time discovering really what is at hand. Like if I said to you, my car's at the shop, you'd be like, okay, okay, first of all, why are you telling me this? And what shop is it? And what car is it? Right? I need more information. I drive a SUV, and it's currently in the shop that I started seeing leaking from below. Oh, okay. So I'd start to dig a little bit more. Where's the shop located? What's the amount of money you're willing to spend? So it's the same thing in working with a client's issues, right? The first question I'm going to ask is, what's the problem? The second one is, here's a crazy question, how do you know it's a problem? That takes a lot of thought, right? How do you know it's a problem? Well,
should there be, sorry to interrupt, should there be a problem? Does the need to improve your life generally imply having a problem, you think?
Well, you could use whatever, again, that's a label, right? Say, what's the issue, or if...
What do you want?
Right? What do you want? I was going to say, what's the goal that we're going after? But you have to understand something. Most people are going to come to a practitioner with a very specific need. They're going to say, I have a problem, I need to get rid of it, or I'm dealing with something that I need to get rid of it. Most people don't say, my life is great. You know, I just want to take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. Because most people aren't focused on what's working. They're focusing on what's not working.
Mm-hmm. And that's a mistake.
I've worked with, you know, CEOs and millionaires. They already know how to get there. They're just interested in what's holding them back right now. So it's usually the issue. So we call it the problem because most people understand what that means inside, you know, general semantics. What's the problem? And then how they determine, how they choose the words to describe their situation is what I'm really listening to, because it may not be a problem. Maybe something, wow, that's just a hurdle. We can easily skip. That may be just a simple challenge or an issue that we can knock out. Some people just don't even realize that it's so small. Most people's problems are too small. In fact, in the book, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle says, in the moment, you have no problems. All your problems exist in the past
or in the future.
Or in the future, not in the present. So when you have some problem, it kind of uncovers where they're at.
Yeah. If you think about that phrase, it is ridiculously obvious, but yet most oblivious for a lot of people.
That's because we're attached to the body. And the body is a continuous linear feeling. We're feeling feelings here, we're feeling feelings now, we're feeling feelings in the future. And we're constantly feeling those feelings. And it's in fact, I was going to write a book. This would be a great title for a book. Robots have no problems. Because robots have no emotions. And problems are only associated with emotions. If there's no emotion behind the problem, it's not even a problem. It's not even a speed bump. It's just, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get that done. And I got thinking about that. Think about that for a second. If a robot comes across what we perceive as a problem, what does it do?
I would imagine technically looks for a short, I don't know, fastest, most effective way to solve it.
It looks for a solution.
And it is emotionally deprived, positively speaking.
Right. So it doesn't get caught up from where it was. It's looking at how to achieve the ultimate goal. So the problem is not a problem. It's just a workaround. And I got really thinking about that. Wow, that would be really powerful to have with human beings. If we could teach people that, you know, the body is just a warehouse of these feelings, and some of these feelings, they lie to us all the time. They're not real.
Why do they lie, though? Does it serve any evolutionary purpose?
Yes, of course. Oh, that's the number one question right there. The prime directive of the unconscious mind. Remember, the unconscious mind runs 90% of what we do and holds all our past limiting beliefs and all our genealogical behaviors that were passed down from thousands of generations before us. And we're working on that. The number one prime directive of the unconscious mind is to protect the body. That's it. That's it. That's all it does. That, and it's looking for how we can move forward. It's a flip side of the coin. So if there is anything in our environment that we perceive as painful, and we could be having a great conversation, right? And you bring up a word, and I went, oh, man. And I associate that word to something in my past that's negative. And to you, it's like it could be a happy word, right? To me, it could be, oh. All of a sudden, my brain goes, stop, back off.
Yeah,
procrastinate. You know, find a different way to deal with this feeling. And most of it is not to deal with it at all, right? It's the fight, flight, or we freeze mechanism. We run, we fight, or we just freeze up. And so that's the biggest challenge we're dealing with emotions. They're good and bad. They don't mean anything. Most of them are there just to protect us. If there's physical pain in the body, if somebody physically is touching you or hurting you, or you got stung by a bee, it's there to tell you something. There's something wrong. Become aware of it and take some action. Don't let that happen again. And the brain stores up these behaviors like, oh man, I know that bee that I just got stung by represents pain. We're not going to do that again. And so that's how some real bad feelings and bad strategies and bad phobias start. Oh, I'm never going to get into a relationship again. Relationships mean really bad feelings and getting hurt. I'm not going to trust anyone. No, it doesn't. That one did. That next one could be one that could bring you out of your shell, like you were saying before, make you become vulnerable. And that's really where life is about. And you've heard this saying before, life is on the edge of your comfort zone.
Right. Experiences, going through stuff, first person, great experience.
Absolutely.
So now, do you believe that if a problem can be fixed with money, that ain't a problem?
With money?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I think a lot of people's problems are money related, right? Most of them are, I can't pay my bills, which is the first thing. Inflation's going up, cost of food's going up, gasoline, incidentals every day. We don't do this thing called life every day just to work and pay the bills. We want to be able to enjoy ourselves as well. That's becoming more expensive, leaving your town, going on vacation. So those things I think people worry about, a lot of them are attached to money. Relationships could be a money problem. Could be. If there's somebody that's out of your league a little bit, and I've dated women like that expect me to spend a lot of money on them. I'm not that kind of person. You don't like me. For me, guess what? We're gonna have a problem down the line, no matter how much money I give you, right? And here's the interesting question I ask a lot of people. Do you know what the 3 biggest problems that we have as adults are? There's only 3. It's only 3 problems we have as adults. We just got done talking about 2 of them.
Man, I'm afraid to even imagine. I think 3 would be an understatement.
I know, but they all coalesce under these 3 umbrellas. One is money. Second is relationship problems. And the third is health. That's it.
Yeah, I would agree.
We get into relationship problems when we're young, in school, when we start learning about the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever it is that you favor. We start learning about relationships and getting in and out of them. By the time we're in our 20s, we're getting a job, money becomes an issue. And for the next 40 years of your life, you're working for what? What do you work for? Most people work to enjoy themselves, not just to pay the bills. The problem is they neglect their health until they're 50 or 60 years old, and then they spend all their money trying to get healthy.
Would you say that for a person who's got these 3 parameters relatively sorted, he may objectively consider himself happy, lucky? And if yes, then what criteria, what standard? Is there like an objective standard to those things?
I don't know. That's a good question. Lucky?
I think there's a bit of luck in all of those things.
I think, what do they call luck?
An opportunity
meeting opportunity, right? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Once you become aware of your goal, usually it shows up because it's already there in the universe in some metaphysical way. It's just that we weren't aware of it. And I use that same excuse, like imagine, and this has happened to me. I wanted to buy a new car, and I thought, well, do I want a car or a truck? I wanted to buy a truck, an SUV. As soon as I knew what that SUV was, I started seeing it all over the road where I never saw it before. Not because it wasn't there, it's because my awareness wasn't placed on it. And it's the same thing.
You operating on a different wavelength.
Exactly. We're working, it's like the radio station. There's all these radio stations going on, but we only tune into one at a time. It's the same thing with life. I think once we tune into it, it becomes more important to us, and therefore we start working towards progress in that part of our life. So luck, yeah, part of it is, but also it's becoming aware, and I think awareness is a huge shift for most people.
What triggers that?
Pain.
Yeah, that's very common, right?
Right?
I think teaches like nothing else does, right?
Oh, God, no, yeah. It's one of the things I say in my courses, in my classes. What is a goal? A goal is being unsatisfied at where you're at now. It doesn't mean that you're unhappy. It's just being unsatisfied. It's like, wow, I have a really nice relationship. I want to take it to the next level. That's being unsatisfied to where I'm at and where I want to go. And then there's the extreme of it. Alcoholism, right? That's an extreme. I want to go from one to the other side of the spectrum. I want to be healthy again. I want to start living my life and building relationships. So
it begins with dissatisfaction.
Which is pain.
Right.
It is one of the things Tony Robbins says in the case of NLP is we do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. We do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. That means,
and I think evolutionary predicted.
Yes. I'd rather protect my $10,000 than try to gamble my $10,000 to make more of it. Same with relationships. People stay in relationships because it's more painful being alone or lonely than it is in a really abusive relationship.
Yeah, that's a common case.
That's money, the same thing. There's a ceiling. Everybody's got a ceiling, a dollar amount. What we presume that we can achieve.
Yeah.
Oh, I could never make over $50,000. And then where are they in life?
Would you say in the context of financial prosperity, first thing is to somehow rid yourself of that ceiling, to somehow remove limitations and barriers and simply allow yourself?
Number one is, what do you want, right? Monetarily wise. What are you going to do in exchange for the value? Because money is really not a physical thing. It's a digital thing, and it always has been. I mean, unless we were trading gold and silver, it's 1,000 years ago. But when it became a dollar, it was always now a digital thing because the bank holds the value of that dollar. So the same thing with money, right? What is the value of that? What's the belief systems that you have around it? And oh my God, there are so many negative beliefs around money. It's crazy. Oh, what is your parent like? You may be able to answer this. What did your parents say about money when you were growing up? Was it good or bad?
No, it was definitely unhealthy.
Yeah.
Definitely unhealthy. A lot of beliefs that held them back.
Right.
For sure.
And so a lot of that is passed down to you, and you then recognize, I don't want to bash my head against the wall of that ceiling anymore. So you find a way. Then we look for other ways to do it. Usually self-development programs that I can eliminate those negative beliefs that I'm holding on to. I mean, one of the things that my mom always used to say to me was, "Oh, we can't afford it." And yet my dad was making so much money, which was crazy. But that was her belief system from where she came from. She came very poor family. So in her mind,
a hostage of certain beliefs.
Yes. Exactly. So in her mind, it didn't matter how much she had; she couldn't afford it because that was a negative belief. Isn't that crazy? We have these beliefs that are passed down from us. You know, I mean, one of the things I talk about in class, which was huge for me, was my dad was a workaholic, and I think that was because he wanted to get away from relationships, especially his family. Even though he was very wealthy and he took care of his family, but one of the things he said to me was, "You're so damn lazy." And he said that when I was 8 years old. I was 8. I didn't even know what that word meant at that time.
Yeah.
But guess what? I carried that into my adulthood. And I always found myself bashing my head against that belief. I'm so damn lazy. That's why I can't do this. I'm so damn lazy. That's why I can't have success. I'm so damn lazy. That's why I can't have the relationship I want.
Crazy how something as unnoticeable and relatively minuscule can predict your whole life, right? Yeah.
Simple words can become so powerful. Yeah. Before we end this session, I want to give you one powerful exercise that changed my life.
Please. Yeah,
okay? So whenever you're ready for it, you let me know and we'll go through that. But I love talking about money because it's, you know, you and I, we're entrepreneurs. This is what we do, right? Yeah. We do it also because we love it, but it'd be really nice if it could support our passions and our lifestyle as well, right? That's becoming an entrepreneur.
That's just exciting, right?
Yes, that takes a lot of risk.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of pain. Most people in the world aren't willing to go through that. They love the security of having that paycheck on Friday. I don't get that. I don't have that. My checks come in lumps, every couple of weeks or couple of months. So I have to be able to budget and know what my limitations are within the parameters that I set for myself this year. And that's very scary. But I don't let that hold me back. I don't let that pain make my decisions. You know, one of the things that I say in my new book is called Mastering Unshakable Confidence is master your emotions, master your decisions, master your future. Because that's all it's about. Everything we do in life is a decision. Everything that we do is based upon a decision. One decision after the next got us here. If you can master your emotions, you can control the decisions you make.
You could probably replace emotion with thoughts. I think thoughts are at the basis of actions.
No, they're the start of it. The thought comes in, but the thought, and this has been already proven, a thought comes into our mind, it's basically filtered. It's deleted, distorted, and generalized through different filters that we have. Our values, our beliefs, our genealogy, our attitude, our past, our memories, and then it forms an internal representation in our mind. That internal representation carries with it the weight of the physiology and emotions behind it. I'll give you an example. When I say to you the word, I'll say a word to you, you tell me the first thing that pops into your head. Dog.
Leash.
Leash. Okay. Somebody else could have said what? Cat. Right? Somebody else could have said affection. Right? When I say more complex words like, ready? Love. What's the first thing that pops into your head?
Trust.
Okay. Now, if you just got dumped last week,
it would have been different, right?
Completely different.
Of course.
Right? If somebody fell in love last night and I said that word to them, completely different answer. So it's not the word, the thought of it, it's how we represent it in the moment. And that moment, yes, and that moment contains our body language and the emotion behind it, and then that causes us to act.
Right.
We act through those emotional states. If it's oh my God, love, I'm never going to fall out of a relationship again. What are you going to do? Are you going to go out tonight and party and look for another relationship? No. Right? If you just lost all your money yesterday, you're not going to go gamble it tomorrow. So you're right, those thoughts come in, but they're manifested into a representational system that contains a lot of emotions with it. And those emotions
experiences, right?
They change our physiology. And your physiology is the easiest thing to change. This is one of the things we talk about in NLP is when you're feeling negative, it's because it's in your body. That state of mind is physically in your body. That feeling is in your body. It's not out here. It's in your body. And the best way to get rid of that feeling is to take a deep breath. It's one of the exercises. Another exercise I'll tell you is when I tell my clients, whenever you're feeling a negative state, you got to be aware of it first. Then take a deep breath, throw your shoulders back, let it out really slowly, and then ask yourself this question: what do I want instead? That presupposes the flip side of that coin. And because you're asking a question, like in my first book, the unconscious mind will answer it. But the challenge is we're always asking really stupid questions of ourselves. Why am I so fat? Why can't I make any money? Why am I so bad at relationships? Well, your unconscious mind loves you so much because it wants to protect you. It's going to give you answers why you can't get in a healthy relationship, why you can't make money. Right. Why you can't be healthy. But if you ask more powerful questions like, how can I make $10,000 today? How can I go out and find the love of my life? What can I do that's going to facilitate better physical vitality? When you ask those kind of questions, your unconscious mind goes, I'm going to give you those answers as well. So when you take a deep breath, that negative feeling is inside your body. Take a deep breath, get that feeling out of your body first. Then ask yourself, what do I want instead? And the unconscious mind will go to work on it.
So shift the focus, right? Recenter it.
There you go. Focus, meaning, action. What are you focusing on? What does it mean? And then what actions are you taking?
Yeah. Now, on a final note, and that's what I've been intending to ask, that might come off as a rather silly question, but do you, having an experience you've gotten helping people financially, not least, do you believe that one can get rich, filthy rich, extremely fast? I'm talking about like above average, super quick.
Yes and no. So let me. I like to give people metaphors. So let's break that question down in simplistic terms. Could you make a beautiful wedding cake that tasted really well as well? When you've never done. Yes, you could. Well, right. There you go. See, that's right there in your head. Part of you says,
okay, I got it.
Yes, I could. And the other part of you goes, no, I've never done it before. But the part of you that says, yes, I could, what do you need? What do you need? You need the recipe. You need the recipe. So it's the same thing in asking, can I make a lot of money real fast? I need the recipe. I've never done that before. So guess what? I'm never going to be able to do it without a recipe, or in NLP we call it a strategy. Without a really good recipe and the attitude as well, there's no way I'm going to be able to achieve that. But if I had a mentor that had the strategy, that had already done it, like give an example, Frank Kern, he made, what was it, $24 million in 1 hour?
No,
that was unheard of back then.
It was a robber?
It was what?
A robber?
No. Have you heard of Frank Kern?
No, I'm afraid not. But 24 mils in 1 hour, only by robbing a bank.
He was an internet marketer. And so all he did was get a lot of affiliates out there that were selling his program. So he had thousands of people selling his program. And they were getting half the commission on it, but he was getting the majority of the commission, which he could have never done himself. So it's the same thing. If I had a strategy like that, and then I had a mentor like that, then I could easily make a lot of money real fast. And that's what really ended up.
Yeah, I don't mean to stretch the time a little bit, but do you believe getting rich quickly should be based on an exclusive skill that you prioritize and hone to the best of your ability, or do you think it must include multiple different skills and aspects? Or so, in other words, should I prioritize one thing and grind it, or should I be a little bit more versatile in a lot of regards and try this and that and this and that?
Good question. They've done an enormous amount of study on successful people. And the common denominator in every single one of them wasn't their skill, because they found out later that they had to learn the skill
as they went.
Yet they want. The number one common denominator was something they were passionate about, something that they liked to do. I'll give you an example. The most famous entrepreneur right now in the world, Elon Musk. He doesn't have, he became an engineer, but he didn't know about rocket science. But his goal was, I want to get onto Mars. That was his goal. Even way before he said, I want to go to the moon. I want to build a rocket ship that we can use, reusable, to get to Mars. Then he started, and here's one of the things that we were just talking about, is you surround yourself with people that have already done it. I don't know everything, and I don't want to spend my time getting to know everything. I want to hire a good team around me. And once I do that, they facilitate my passion. Because now we're moving at an exponential rate, because I've got a lot of people behind me and a lot of knowledge behind me. So I don't need to know this skill. In fact, that was one of the things that Napoleon Hill said in his book, Think and Grow Rich, back in 1937. He goes, son, somebody was interviewing him. And he says, you don't know how the world works. He goes, I don't have to know everything, how to succeed. I have buttons on my desk that I can press and call up information and knowledge when I need it. And that's the way we should be too. A lot of people get stuck, as you were just saying, they get stuck in that skill mentality, that mindset of, oh, I have to know this first before, I can't go out and learn, I can't do day trading, I don't know anything about it. Well, how do you think you're going to learn it? Either you learn
if you restrict yourself in the first place. Right?
Trial and error, which that sucks, especially if you're dealing with money, or go learn from a mentor that already knows how to do it and liquidate your money faster to invest it rather than.
And it's crazy how far the mind can take you, right? So you're saying that passion is way more prevalent other than skill and narrow specialization, right?
Well, what do you think is going to help you continue in the face of adversity?
Yeah, the passion. Yes,
right?
Yes,
when things get hard and it always does, or it gets impossible, it's not going to be your skill. You're going to go, God, I got to go learn something else. Right?
Don't you think that going out and looking for a mentor is a bit lame? Shouldn't it? Maybe I've got some wrong suppositions about it, but shouldn't be a little bit more You know, it's like, I'm thinking of how I found my coach. I never went and searched for him. It's just so happened I've been following him. And then I got that awareness. And one moment I was like, shit, well, maybe I got to go and ask. And so should one go out and search and actively check for mentors available on those sites? Or does it have to happen somehow differently, almost mysteriously, if you may?
And that, boy, that's what you call manifesting.
Yeah.
What you just said. It's manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
Manifesting begins, and I actually did a class on this as well. Manifesting begins, again, with the thought. Where do you want to end up?
Mm-hmm.
Clarity, we already know this. Clarity is power. Mm-hmm. Clarity is power. Mm-hmm. Once you become real clear about what you want, then manifesting is detaching from the outcome. Mm-hmm. Emotionally. Not letting that emotion get in your way. Because then, once you do like you did, you start subscribing to newsletters, you start looking around. It's not that you're really looking, it's just that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it showed up. It's not that it wasn't there, it was always there. But when you were ready,
frequency.
When you're ready for it, emotionally, mentally, physically, you know.
Yeah, so you do not fasten it, you do not push it, right? But you're just switching the frequency and you let it happen.
There you go. You know, some people, and everybody's experienced this before, you go to a crowded parking lot and you're like, oh, God, I'm going to have a hard time finding a parking space. And you do. But if you know, oh, my, I'm going to find one really close right up front, somebody's pulling out and you pull right in. It's manifesting. Or you're thinking of somebody and they call on the phone.
Right.
I've done this 1,000 times where I'm thinking of somebody. I was in Hawaii when this happened. I was just thinking of somebody and all of a sudden they turned the corner. I ran right into them.
A lot of people chalk it up to some sort of paranormal abilities.
No. There was you said it so perfectly, a frequency. We're all in different frequencies at the same time. And when you tune into that frequency, whatever that is for you, the universe will provide. Just that we get caught up in our own crap and our own garbage, and it doesn't allow us to see what's really out there. So that's why I think awareness is the key to number one, is really focusing on that where you're at, that you're unsatisfied, and what's your goal that you want to achieve? What's the next step? Right?
Well, listen, I think we've done a lovely 1 hour. I am more than grateful for the episode. I think it's extraordinarily useful, and I'll be sure to re-listen to it plenty more times.
I got 1 minute. Ready? You want the exercise?
Sure, yeah.
This exercise changed my life, literally. The reason why, again, we don't achieve the things that we want is because we have low self-esteem. Every problem that I've ever worked with anyone, I don't care, with CEO, a coach, or athlete, it all comes down to self-worth. Every problem. Build up your self-worth, achieve more. So here's the exercise. You've got to internalize this. And the way you internalize it, you say this: I like myself. 3 times. Each time with more intensity. I like myself.
Aggressively. Right.
I like myself. I mean, I would do this in the bank, standing in line at the grocery store. People look at me like, you're strange. But the more that you get that affirmation into your mind emotionally, when it's not just the language, it's the emotion attached to it. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I would do this 10, 20 times a day. And after 3-4 weeks, a couple of months, I found myself going, wow, this is...
The quality of life has improved.
I feel good about myself. So therefore, I'm going to take more risk. It's like my mom used to say, pat yourself on the back because no one else is going to do it.
I practice something of that kind in journaling, honestly. I don't know if that's been a part of your practice, but it's very insightful, I find it. And sometimes I just, maybe it sounds a bit of a pussy move, so to speak, but, I just praise myself sometimes. I give myself some credit.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's about pat yourself on the back.
Listen, man, beyond grateful. It's been wonderful, and I'm truly extraordinarily grateful. Tomorrow, I know tomorrow varies, but I think it will be tomorrow. I will send you the link to the YouTube video. I will definitely post it as soon as possible, and you will receive the link. Once again, thanks, and wish you prosperity, and probably will repeat it one more time. I think I'll have more questions as I go, for sure.
Thanks, buddy. You're definitely a gem. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, pal. Bye-bye.